Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. And thank you always for your comments and discussions. Of course, I touched the third rail of chemtrails or geoengineering or whatever. And it really shouldn't be that taboo of a subject, just to start with, because there's plenty in the public domain about geoengineering, about weather modification or weather warfare. There's plenty of information out there. So, when you get all twisted up about, oh my God, that's how dare you? How dare you? How dare you be such a reactionary that you cannot take in some information from somebody, that you mostly appreciate their, authenticity or honesty about certain subjects. I just find that funny. And not every person and not every entity is a perfect 100% accuracy machine. So, there are going to be places where you don't agree with things or people or ideas, and it doesn't mean that you should reject the whole thing out of hand. If you do that in life, you're probably going to end up sitting in a room eating cat food, not talking to anybody, because everybody's crazy, or you don't trust anybody, you don't like anybody. So you're going to have to learn to live in a world where things are not perfectly aligned with your thoughts. Anyways, so I'm going to go off a little bit on this subject because it's my channel. So just bringing you some interesting ideas, because in the wake of yesterday's video, I got some good links and whatnot. However, I can't find my inbox. There it is. So here's an interesting comment by Shurahana Yumi. I'm going to read this comment to you. This is the commenter's comment. I'm just reading this to you. Weather as weapon versus chemtrail conspiracies. Here are some study links on this topic from evidence-based and peer-reviewed scholarly sources. For sleepless nights, hope this helps, as you requested something like this clarification from genuine science research on your program tonight, which I follow typically silently. Overview. So it is important not to confuse contrails and chemtrails and cloud seeding and weather modification. Includes cloud seeding inducing seismic events, volcanoes, and more. So, yes. I try not to conflate all of those things. I think there are very many varied things happening. There are no mysteries about cloud seeding, weather modification to induce rain, which is used intentionally, but you got to have clouds in the first place. This has a long history in warfare. So we know about this. The United States using this in Vietnam, also use it against Cuba. And probably many other places as well. Contrails, condensation trails are a normal phenomenon. Chemtrails, chemical trails, are often confused with contrails and weather modification. Climate science does not yet include weather modification, but it is a science in and of itself. And this is why I think this is actually important to climate change news. This is why I bring it up. And as we have seen, as I just read an article, it says contrails are a huge, as Bernie Sanders says, huge factor. I messed that up. Sorry, Bernie. Looks like climate change. So I'm a science master's and I work in a U.S. government research facility where they keep stacks of top security clearance required shelves that housed materials on weather as a weapon. So, okay, I don't know this person, and I'm not vouching for their verification of they work in the U.S. government. This is just something they're saying, but we're just going to have to take this on face value. Stacks, okay. Required shelves that house materials on weather as a weapon, cloud seeding, and weather modification using chemicals sprayed and injected into the atmosphere since at least the 1940s. So that, and there is a document, well, you can find it and search it for yourself, where the Department of Defense declare, they say outright that they are seeking to control the weather as a means of, supremacy. I have to have FBI clearance as a researcher to enter the library and archives that show the detailed reports of these cases. Some reports are available on FOIA request. Request them from the Bureau of Reclamation Library, which has a public library with some documents available to the public. You can see if you just Google. Operation Popeye is a well-documented public case. This is Vietnam, in which weather modification via cloud seeding was used as a regional device and weapon of war. We know the U.S. government, the U.S. got, and others have this ability. Cloud seeding is used all over the U.S. and is a form of well-known weather modification that dumps aluminum all over the land where the rain from these clouds falls. Some studies have just begun to link this to a decline in bees. For more on the history, and there are quite a few studies about that, about the effects on not just bees, but other animals or insects. Some studies have just begun to link this to the decline of bees. For more on the history of weather modification by the U.S. government, there's no question that we have the capability to modify weather and that we are seeding clouds much more than the public is told. And we know that the chemicals used to cloud seed is actually very harmful in all life in the biosphere. This means that the chemtrail conspiracies are onto something, but off on some things too. You have to separate the wheat from the chaff. That is also. And then this person, I don't know whether they're male or female, links something from Wikipedia on geoengineering, and you can look that up. There's a link here. Scientists, this is from Wiki Geoengineering, so or actually from scientistwarning.org. Excuse me. So, anyways, interesting comment. Counsel Thyself also linked me a few things that I wanted to bring up that were quite interesting. This is from Geophysical Research Letters, published Science Journal. 3 contrail systems were analyzed with geostationary satellite data to document the conversion of the contrails to cirrus clouds. This is from 1998, documenting contrails turning into cirrus clouds. 2 unique contrails, a pair of figure eights, and a NASA DC-8 oval were tracked for more than 7 hours. A cluster of contrails from commercial aircraft lasted over 17 hours. Figure eights produce a cirrus cloud having a maximum extent of 12,000 square kilometers. Commercial cluster reached an area of 35,000 square kilometers. The contrail cirrus were thin, with optical depths between 0.2 and 0.5. In all cases, cloud particle size increased as the contrails developed into cirrus clouds. So they know that this is happening. They understand that this is happening. And this is something that I'm actually quite interested in myself, because I believe, and as they know, that contrails can turn into clouds, and you can use those clouds to do what? Well, let's see what to do. Contrails reduce daily temperature range. This is from the journal Nature. And this is talking about the lack of contrails after 9/11. The potential of condensation trails from jet aircraft to affect regional scale surface temperatures has been debated for years, but was difficult to verify until an opportunity arose as a result of a 3-day grounding of all commercial aircraft in the United States in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks on September 11th. Here we show that there was an anomalous increase in the average diurnal temperature range, which we all know about this. Because persisting contrails can reduce the transfer of both incoming and solar and outgoing infrared radiation. They're talking about persistent contrails, this isn't aerosols, this isn't particles. they're talking about persistent contrails. I'm assuming they're talking about contrails that turn into clouds or stay in the air for a long time, blocking light, or blocking heat and light, or trapping heat. I'll link all these things. You guys can check them out. There just is, I think, there's a lot that we still don't know. Obviously, the study I just read yesterday was talking about the effect of contrails. There's actually 0 contrails in the sky today over Los Angeles, and I find that extremely bizarre, because if they're naturally occurring, not one. And airplanes travel, they change altitudes, right, through takeoff and landing, or wherever they're at in their travels, right? There's lots of airplanes in the sky over Los Angeles. There's lots of planes taking off and landing. There's lots of planes flying their routes over LA or over the area. There's lots of planes at different altitudes, and not one of them is creating a contrail. And it's 51% humidity in the air today. I just find it. There's no natural contrails today, but on another day, lots of natural contrails. And I just, to me, it's very suspicious. I'm not talking about chemtrails right now. I'm not talking about, they're spraying us or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about contrails turning into clouds. I think that's a different thing. People talk about contrails. They talk about, naturally occurring contrails. I'm talking about the manipulation of the fact that contrails turn into clouds. That's a different thing from chemtrails. Or maybe it isn't. I don't know. But to me, that's a different thing. Just trying to clarify that. This is based on science. So all you guys rejecting these ideas, oh, get out your tinfoil hats. Oh, what are you talking about? I thought we were talking about climate change. I just read an article saying that contrails affect climate change. And this says it affects the temperature of the planet. You could say this is accidental geoengineering, but so if they know this is going on, yes, accidentally or unintentionally, we're causing stuff to happen, right? Climate change is geoengineering on a massive scale. But if you know that certain things have a certain effect, and the powers that be, know this, why wouldn't you manipulate that? They do manipulate that. They've been shown to be master manipulators. Just take this one little thing and go, oh, of course they wouldn't do that. Who are you? I mean, where is your brain? You can totally go down this rabbit hole of abrupt climate change, and they're not telling us the truth, or, right? They are not telling us the truth, but they would never do this. How do you slice that up in your brain? I just don't, I don't know how you get there from here, from watching this channel. I don't know how you get there from here. But anyways, that's a totally different subject. Lastly, I'm going to link this. I'm not going to play any of this, but this is an interesting exchange between Jim Lee and Mick West. Some people like Jim Lee. Some people don't like Jim Lee. Some people like Mick West. Some people don't like Mick West. I don't care. I think that the actual conversation is what's interesting here, the exchange of ideas, and that's way more important than, canceling people or like telling people they've lost all credibility. Nothing they ever say can be listened to again because they said something you didn't agree with. These guys are willing to disagree and have an exchange of ideas, and it's an interesting exchange. So, check it out if you're of the mind. Let's see. I didn't want this to be a long video, but it might actually end up being a long video. Maybe Maybe I'll make a long one for you and then move on. Doubling down. This is from Counterpunch, July 5th, by Richard Moser. Doubling down the military. Maybe this is perfectly aligned with what I'm talking about. The military, big bankers, and big oil are not in climate denial. They are in control and plan to keep it that way. So they know that climate change is as bad as it is, and they are telling people things, or trying to disseminate ideas that keep people from actually thinking about what's going on, or understanding what's going on, or looking what's going on. And it's happening on all kinds of levels. Capitalism, militarism, and imperialism are disastrously intertwined with the fossil fuel economy. A globalized economy predicated on growth at any social or environmental cost, carbon-dependent international trade, the limitless extraction of natural resources, and a view of citizens as nothing more than consumers cannot be the basis for tackling climate change. Little wonder, then, that the elites have nothing to offer beyond continued militarization and trust in techno fixes. That's from Nick Buxton and Ben Hayes. The ruling class may be an utter failure. That is not stopping them taking aggressive action on climate change. Their chief concern, maintaining power, control, and profits at all cost. The plan is well underway, and it sure ain't the Green New Deal. Just imagine a more extreme version of the world that already exists, where healthcare is rationed, where wealth inequality strangles democracy, where austerity is a weapon of class warfare, where millions die prematurely from toxins in the air and water, where war and incarceration is the solution of choice, where people are rounded up in concentration camps, where corporations rule unchallenged, where extreme weather wreaks havoc in an expanding circle of misery. The only new thing about their solution is the stench of fascism that grows ever stronger and more odious. The bosses want more of the same. When Trump and the Republicans deny climate change, when Pelosi, Pallone, Perez, Biden, and Obama join with Trump in sabotaging the Green New Deal or dismissing climate action as too expensive, too dreamy, not practical, or too pure, they are all bold-faced liars and frauds. The Republicans know full well what their partners in crime, oil companies, bankers, and the military brass, have known about climate change for decades. And the corporate Democrats know that these same powerful players, they too already have a risky plan to deal with climate change. From their shared perspective, even the Democrats' Green New Deal, despite its weaknesses, must be marginalized since it competes with the establishment's plan for our future. If you don't understand that corporate Democrats are pretty much the same as Republicans, only they have, better lip service than Republicans. They're better liars than Republicans, or more compassionate sounding liars. We have basically right-wingers controlling the Democratic Party. They're not that much different from Republicans. Republicans just, they actually have it easy because their base is just like, whatever you say, it's fine. It's totally fine. To maintain power, they need to limit our thinking. The two most important narratives imposed on us are the climate change as a threat to national security and as a business opportunity, the twin rationales for military and corporate power. They want to focus us on how to manage the crisis, profit from it, adapt to it, instead of opposing it. Once framed in this way, the very institutions responsible for climate change can benefit from disaster while hiding their responsibility for creating the crisis. But the military corporate management of the crisis will undoubtedly follow the same principles that created the crisis. The costs of pollution, adaptation, endless growth, and war won't appear in the corporate ledger. Military budgets will only grow larger. The costs will be externalized and paid by the suffering of everyday people. And I'm going to interject right now. One of the ways they frame ideas that go against their paradigm or their propaganda is by calling people who go against their propaganda or their paradigm conspiracy theorists, or in league with the Russians, or whatever, fill in the blank. But those are the two main ones right now. Or terrorists, or, Assad apologists or Russian apologists or ISIS apologists or terrorist apologists or, on and on and on. 63 million Americans currently exposed to unsafe drinking water, and the 200,000 in the U.S. that currently die prematurely from air pollution are just a down payment. And the U.S. is the wealthiest country in world history. The global figure for air pollution-related deaths is 5.5 million annually. The 20 million or so deaths from war since World War II are a gross outstanding debt. How is that for adaptation and management? How will our rulers, plan to maintain control as the crisis deepens? Plans? What plans? Unsurprisingly, the military plans to maintain its ambition for full spectrum dominance. A 2014 report from the Department of Defense quotes former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, who, having previously been on the board of directors of Chevron and Deutsche Bank, knows how to unite big oil, big banks, and big guns. Our coastal installations are vulnerable to rising sea levels and increased flooding. While droughts, wildfires, and more extreme temperatures could threaten many of our training activities, a baseline survey to assess the vulnerability of the military's more than 7,000 bases, installations, and other facilities is nearly complete, Hagel says, in places like the Hampton Roads region in Virginia, which houses the largest concentration of U.S. military sites in the world. We see recurrent flooding today, and we are beginning to work to address a projected sea level rise of 1.5 feet over the next 20 or 50 years. Perhaps that is what Elizabeth Warren is talking about when she talks about greening the military. She wants to green the military. Oh boy. They want us to forget that it has now been proven beyond doubt that the military is the world's largest consumer of fossil fuels and largest polluter. Ooh, right when I said it. War will continue. Climate crisis be damned. Elizabeth Warren's 2019 policy statement and the bipartisan letter sent to Trump by over 100 Congress members urging Trump to make climate change a national security issue is more proof that war trumps climate. In truth, the military is caught in a crisis of its own making. As Desiree Helligers puts it, the U.S. military poses a significant threat to the U.S. military. Yes, climate change is a huge military threat, but we're causing climate change. What do we do? A deer in the headlight moment. While the pro-war media makes much of military's attempts to use alternative energy, the Pentagon failed to reach its puny 2014 goal of 5% renewable. Similarly, that's funny. Obama's 2009 stimulus package canceled out the effects of small green spending with an all-the-above approach, including money for clean coal, record oil production, and increased energy use. This pattern of greenwashing, minor green efforts masking major investments in fossil fuels, is identical to the corporate approach. The oil companies and the big banks that make crazy money from fossil fuels also hide the truth by posing the problem as a question of proper management. Sharon Kelly reports the banker's view of a new business opportunity. Scientific research finds that an increasing concentration of greenhouse gases is warming the planet, posing significant risks to prosperity and the growth of the global economy. JP Morgan Chase Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley wrote in a 2015 statement. As major financial institutions, we have the business opportunity to build a more sustainable, low-carbon economy and the ability to help manage and mitigate these climate-related risks. Michael Bloomberg, anybody? So how is it that the bankrollers of the climate chaos investing $1.9 trillion in fossil fuels just since the Paris Accords also claim to manage and mitigate these climate-related risks? According to the bankers, the problem with climate change is that it's posing significant risks to the prosperity and growth of the global economy. What they will not say is that the global economy, which demands enormous fossil fuel production and consumption, is posing significant risks to the climate. Ding, ding, ding. The global shipping and aviation on which peak profit making depends is, like the military, exempt from the Paris Accords. The bankers, generals, and politicians are protecting the sources of their power. What the bankers will not say is that the billions of the dollars they trade in are petrodollars, as explained in this informative documentary video. A 40-year backroom deal with the Saudis secretly recycled oil money back to the U.S. This deal essentially shifted the U.S. dollar from the gold standard to the oil standard. According to Bloomberg, the paper, the basic framework was strikingly simple. The U.S. would buy oil from Saudi Arabia and provide the kingdom military aid and equipment. In return, the Saudis would plow billions of their petrodollar revenue back into treasuries and finance America's spending. Buying oil in dollars is a form of imperial tribute other countries pay to the U.S., which is why the U.S. insists all oil trading be in U.S. currency. Iraq and Libya once traded all oil in other currencies. Venezuela, Syria, Iran, Russia, and China still do. See? Since oil props up the U.S. dollar, bankers have a direct interest in wars that prop up the fossil fuel regime. It is highly unlikely that the U.S. dollar, the military-industrial complex, or the global corporate economy can live without its addiction to oil. Whatever green capitalists imagine in their wildest dreams, some contradictions simply cannot be overcome. It's power to the people or nothing. There is no middle ground, but we will be swamped along with the middle ground if we do not have real leverage and real power. The military, the oil company, and the big banks have plans and power both. The Green Party's Real Green New Deal is a solid plan, as are the guiding principles offered by DSA eco-socialists or Tulsi Gabbard's OFF Act. But the straightest line to the power we need is not just good policy, more manifestos, analytical precision, or electoral politics. Although those things might be helpful, it's the sloppy, contradictory, demanding work of organizing in direct democracy. The many efforts to protect water and confront infrastructure projects are leading the way. The Red Nation is a new voice telling classic political truths. Listen carefully. The Red Deal platform states, this will encompass the entirety of indigenous America, which includes our non-indigenous comrades and relatives who live here. We cannot expect politicians to do what only mass movements can do. A mass mobilization, one like we've never seen in history, is required to save this planet. Indigenous movements have always been at the forefront of environmental justice struggles. The Red Deal is not a deal or a bargain with the elite and powerful. It's a deal with the humble part of the earth, a pact that we shall strive for peace and justice, and the movements for justice must come from below and to the left. We cannot expect politicians to do what only mass movements can do from below. Cannot expect politicians to do what only mass movements can do from below and to the left. Truth, but how? Whether you are base building with workers or tenants, movement building with peace and environmental movements, or running electoral campaigns, the underappreciated work of talking with and listening to everyday people is the fast track to the fundamental change. Talking with everyday people is a revolutionary act. Acting with others is better yet. A massive Harvard study tells us what we already suspect. We have the most dysfunctional, least democratic electoral system of any so-called Western democracy. Ding, ding, ding. The collapse of real representation is a leading cause of crisis. To think that such a broken system can repair itself and then take on massive problems of its own making without an equally massive and equally disruptive popular movement is more than just wishful thinking. It is a profound disregard for history. Show me some evidence. How was the original New Deal created? The failure to allow moderate and popular reforms like universal health care does not bode well for government's ability to act on climate and war, issues that strike right at the heart of the existing social order. We have good blueprints. Excuse me. It's vitally important to put demilitarization at the center of our efforts, not just because the U.S. empire is the world's largest consumer of fossil fuels, or because the same military is the enforcer of the global fossil fuel regime, but because understanding the connections between war and climate changes clears the way for fusion and synergy between environmental and peace movements and movements of economic justice. Excuse me. But the real question, the unanswered question, is how? How do we move on climate crisis? Can we build it from the bottom up? It sure isn't coming from the top down. Can the Green New Deal become a revolutionary reform? Ask people what they think about the Green New Deal. Where it leads is up to us. How is by pressuring. How is by pressuring. How is by activist movements taking to the streets, taking to social media, taking to every platform and form of communication that they have. The only way that massive social acts or movements or laws have been enacted has been by pressure from the ground, from the bottom up. Change will not come from the top down. It will not come from the middle. It has to be from the radical left. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.